I'm Audrey, and I came into this world mere minutes after my twin sister Ashley. Those few minutes might as well have been years, given how differently our lives would unfold. Our parents, Linda and Robert Matthews, lived in a suburban house in Connecticut. Mom worked as a real estate agent, always dressed to impress, with her perfectly manicured nails and designer suits. Dad ran his own small accounting firm, spending most of his days buried in spreadsheets and tax forms. They seemed like your typical middle-class family, except for one thing, their obvious favoritism toward Ashley. I first noticed it when we were around 5. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you might miss if you weren't living it every day. While other parents of twins dressed their children identically, celebrating their matching status, our parents made sure Ashley stood out. They'd take us shopping, and Ashley would get the new Nike sneakers while I got the clearance rack specials. She got the authentic Barbie dolls, I got the knockoffs from the dollar store. Even our birthday celebrations felt uneven. Ashley's portion of our shared cake always seemed bigger, her pile of presents always taller. These little moments piled up like stones in my pocket, weighing me down day after day. When Ashley got her ears pierced at 6, I wasn't even asked if I wanted mine done too. When she started taking ballet lessons, I was told we couldn't afford 2 sets of lessons. Somehow, though, there was always money for Ashley's growing list of activities: gymnastics, piano, art classes. Our early childhood photos tell the story better than I ever could. In every family picture, Ashley's front and center, usually in some frilly dress from an expensive children's boutique. I'm always somewhere in the background, wearing whatever was on clearance at Target, looking like an afterthought in my own family portraits. Maybe they just don't see it, I remember telling myself at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on our shared bedroom ceiling. Ashley had twice as many stars on her side of the room. Even the universe above our beds played favorites. The worst part wasn't the material differences. Kids can survive without designer clothes and fancy toys. It was the way they looked at her versus how they looked at me. When Ashley spoke, they leaned in, hanging on every word. When I spoke, their eyes would drift, their attention already moving on to something else, someone else. Always to Ashley. As we approached school age, I held on to hope that things would change. Maybe once we were in school, once teachers and other adults were involved, our parents would see us both equally. Maybe they'd realize that having twins wasn't a burden but a blessing. Maybe they'd finally see me. I remember standing in front of our house that first morning, Ashley and I in our new uniforms, Mom taking pictures. For once, we looked identical, same plaid skirt, same white blouse, same navy cardigan. I thought maybe this was the beginning of change. "Girls, smile," Mom called out, but her eyes were fixed on Ashley. "Ashley, honey, tilt your head a little to the right. Perfect." The familiar ache in my chest returned. Even in identical clothes, she found ways to make Ashley shine brighter. Our classroom was bright and cheerful, with alphabet charts on the walls and tiny desks arranged in neat rows. Mrs. Thompson, our teacher, sat us alphabetically, Matthews and Matthews, side by side. I was thrilled. Finally, someone who would treat us the same. But after school, the old patterns emerged stronger than ever. Mom's silver SUV would pull up to the curb, and what happened next became a daily routine that felt like a twist of the knife. "Audrey, go straight home and start your homework," Mom would say, barely looking at me as I climbed out of the car. Then she'd turn to Ashley with a bright smile. "Ready for dance class, sweetheart?" Off they'd go, to ballet on Mondays, piano on Tuesdays, art class on Wednesdays, gymnastics on Thursdays, and drama club on Fridays. I'd watch them drive away, then walk into our empty house, the silence my only companion. I threw myself into my studies, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I got perfect grades, they'd notice me. I'd sit at the kitchen table, methodically working through math problems, practicing my spelling words, reading ahead in our textbooks. The house would stay quiet for hours, until I'd hear the garage door open and their voices floating in, Ashley chattering about her latest achievement, Mom's proud responses echoing through the halls. "Mom, I got an A+ on my history test," I said one evening, holding up my paper. "That's nice, dear," she replied distractedly, helping Ashley unpack her dance bag. "Ashley, show Dad the new routine you learned today." I kept trying. Every perfect score, every teacher's praise, every gold star, I collected them like precious gems, hoping one day they'd be enough to make my parents' eyes light up the way they did for Ashley. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 12, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water after finishing my homework. Their voices drifted up from the den, where they often sat after Ashley went to bed. I normally ignored their late-night conversations, but something made me stop this time. "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," Dad was saying, his voice heavy with something I couldn't identify. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "Having twins. Ashley would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But two of them." "I know what you mean," Mom sighed. "Ashley's special. She's meant for great things. But Audrey, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Ashley." The glass slipped from my hand, but I caught it before it could shatter. I wished I could catch my heart just as easily. In that moment, everything crystallized. The years of trying to earn their love, of hoping things would change, it all seemed so foolish now. They didn't want me. They never had. I was the unwanted twin, the extra daughter, the one they wished they didn't have. After that night, something shifted inside me. I stopped seeking approval and instead focused entirely on my studies. Turns out, freedom from constantly trying to please my parents cleared my mind in ways I never expected. My grades, already good, became exceptional. "Excellent analysis, Audrey," Mr. Peterson said one day in English class, holding up my essay on The Great Gatsby. "Class, this is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for." I could feel Ashley tensing up beside me, her pencil tapping against her desk in that aggressive way it did when she was angry. I kept my eyes forward, but I could see her face turning red from the corner of my eye. Similar scenes played out in other classes. Math, science, history, it didn't matter. The more the teachers praised my work, the more Ashley seethed. It came to a head in chemistry when Mrs. Rodriguez asked me to tutor other students. That evening, I heard Ashley's voice from downstairs, "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Audrey and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." The next day, Mom stormed into school, designer handbag swinging, heels clicking against the linoleum floors. I watched from the hallway as she marched into Principal Williams' office, where they'd called in Mrs. Chen, our class teacher. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Mom demanded. Mrs. Chen, bless her, stayed calm and professional. "Mrs. Matthews, let me show you something." She pulled out our progress logs, laying them side by side. "Here are both girls' records. Audrey consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects. Ashley's grades are." "Are you suggesting my Ashley isn't smart?" Mom interrupted. "Not at all. I'm merely pointing out that Audrey's academic achievements are. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're all biased against Ashley." No amount of evidence could convince her. When she came home that day, I overheard her telling Dad that the teachers were obviously prejudiced against their precious Ashley. By 16, I was tired of asking for pocket money and watching Ashley get hundreds of dollars just for existing. I applied for a job at the Coffee Bean, a cute cafe just a few blocks from our house. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved the independence it gave me. Plus, my coworkers actually appreciated my presence, a novel experience in my life. Ashley, of course, couldn't let me have even this small victory. "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress," she sneered one morning, watching me put on my uniform. "That's so common. Mom, can you believe Audrey's going to serve people food?" Mom just made a disapproving noise, sliding another $100 bill across the table to Ashley for her shopping needs. That's when I remembered something I'd overheard years ago, a heated phone conversation where Mom had yelled, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore." You're embarrassing with your tiny house and your budget clothes. I've moved up in the world. She'd been talking to her parents, my grandparents. The ones I'd never met because they weren't good enough for her new lifestyle. That evening, while Mom and Ashley were at another shopping spree, I snuck into Mom's home office. In her address book, under D4, Do Not Contact, I found an address in the older part of town. The next day, instead of heading to my afternoon shift at the cafe, I took a bus to a small blue house with a well-tended garden. My heart was pounding as I walked up the path. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to try. I raised my hand to knock on the door. The door opened, revealing an elderly couple. The woman had gray hair tied back in a neat bun, and the man wore wire-rimmed glasses. They looked at me with confusion until I spoke. "Hi, I'm Audrey Matthews. I think you're my grandparents." Their jaws dropped simultaneously. The woman, my grandmother, put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Frank, it's really her." They invited me in, and suddenly I was sitting in their cozy living room, drinking tea from delicate cups while they couldn't stop staring at me. "You look just like your mother did at your age," Grandma said softly. Before she changed. That first visit turned into many more. I'd tell my parents I was working extra shifts at the cafe, but instead, I'd spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them pastries and cookies from work. They were wonderful listeners, genuinely interested in my life, my studies, my dreams. For the first time, I felt seen. Then came graduation day. The ceremony was typically Matthew's family style, all focus on Ashley. When they called my name as valedictorian, my parents barely clapped, but when Ashley walked across the stage, they hooped and hollered like she'd just won an Olympic medal. I should have been prepared for what came the next day, but somehow, they still managed to shock me. "Girls, we have exciting news," Mom announced at breakfast, practically bouncing in her seat. "We're celebrating graduation in Hawaii." My heart lifted for a moment. Despite everything, I thought maybe, just maybe, this one time. "Honey," Mom turned to me, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we only got 3 tickets, for us and Ashley. You understand, right? Someone needs to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe." Ashley didn't even try to hide her smirk as she stirred her orange juice. "Don't worry, sis. I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." The next morning, I watched from our front door as they loaded their expensive luggage into the taxi. Ashley turned back, waving with exaggerated enthusiasm. "I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Hawaii. You can look at them between serving tables." As soon as the taxi disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my grandparents. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over when I heard Grandma's voice. They went to Hawaii without me," I managed to get out between sobs. "They just left me here like I'm nothing." "Oh, sweetheart," Grandma's voice was soft but firm. "Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration." I drove to their house, still wiping away tears. As I turned onto their street, I noticed something unusual, a brand new Mercedes C-Class sedan parked in their driveway, gleaming in the summer sun. It looked completely out of place next to their modest home. "Whose car is that?" I asked as I walked up to their front porch. Grandpa's eyes twinkled as he held up a set of keys. "Yours. Happy graduation, Audrey." I stood there, mouth open, sure I'd misheard him. "What? But how?" I thought. "Sit down, dear," Grandma patted the porch swing. "We have something to tell you." They explained how, after Mom cut ties with them, they'd invested their modest savings in several tech startups. Those investments had paid off spectacularly, but they'd chosen to keep living simply in their familiar home. "Your mother left us because she thought we were too poor, too beneath her," Grandpa said, shaking his head. "The irony is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off. We've been waiting for the right moment to help you," Grandma added. And this seemed perfect. I hugged them both, overwhelmed by their generosity and love. They ushered me inside, where they'd prepared a beautiful graduation lunch. The table was set with their best china, and a congratulations graduate banner hung across the dining room. Over homemade lasagna and garlic bread, they asked about my college plans. Actually, I said, feeling proud, I got accepted to Princeton with a full academic scholarship. I start in the fall. Their faces lit up with genuine joy, so different from my parents' lukewarm reaction when I'd told them. That's wonderful, Grandma exclaimed. But what about housing? The scholarship covers that? Well, I was planning to live in the dorms. Nonsense, Grandpa cut in. We'll get you a nice apartment near campus. Something safe and comfortable where you can focus on your studies. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Ashley, sending a photo of herself lounging on a Hawaiian beach, captioned, "Wish you were here, not." I looked at the message, then at my grandparents' loving faces, then at the keys to my new car sitting next to my plate. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the lesser twin. 2 weeks crawled by. I spent my days working at the cafe, visiting my grandparents, and preparing for college. Each evening, my phone would buzz with another notification, Ashley posing on different beaches, dining at expensive restaurants, or lounging by infinity pools. Each photo was accompanied by increasingly obnoxious captions, "Living my best life while someone serves coffee. This is what success looks like. Some people vacation in Hawaii, others just dream about it." Then came the day of their return. I was in the living room, pretending to read a book while watching through the window. The taxi pulled up, and I couldn't help but smile as I saw their reactions unfold in slow motion. Mom noticed it first. She stopped so abruptly that Ashley walked right into her, dropping her designer beach bag onto the concrete driveway. Dad, struggling with their expensive matching luggage set, nearly tripped over them both. "What is that?" Mom's voice carried through the front window, high-pitched and sharp. She was pointing at the Mercedes as if it might bite her, her perfectly manicured finger trembling slightly. Is that a new C-Class?" Dad stammered, his jaw hanging open. "The latest model?" I took my time walking to the front door, enjoying every second of their confusion. Their tan seemed to pale with each step I took. When I stepped onto the porch, they all turned to stare at me like they were seeing a ghost. "Whose car is that?" Dad demanded, his face red from both the Hawaiian sun and shock. I twirled the keys around my finger, the way Ashley always did with her designer purse straps when she was showing off. "Mine." Ashley let out a bark of laughter, but I could hear the uncertainty in it. "Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary. What did you do, steal it, rob the cafe? Or are you just parking it for some rich customer?" "Actually," I said, savoring each word like the expensive chocolates they'd never shared with me, "it was a graduation gift. From Grandma and Grandpa." The color drained from Mom's tanned face so fast I thought she might faint. "What? You know, your parents? The ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor? Those grandparents." Dad turned to Mom so fast I thought he might get whiplash. "Linda, call your parents. Right now." His voice had that same demanding tone he used when ordering at restaurants. Mom's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, her French manicure catching the sunlight. She didn't even bother with pleasantries when Grandma answered, putting the phone on speaker without realizing it. "Where did you get the money for that car?" she demanded, her voice echoing in our front yard. I could hear Grandma's voice through the phone, calm and slightly amused. "Oh, hello to you too, dear. Enjoying your expensive vacation?" I saw all the lovely photos Ashley posted. "The Royal Hawaiian Hotel looks lovely this time of year." "Don't change the subject. How could you afford to buy Audrey a Mercedes?" "Well, sweetheart," Grandma's voice dripped with satisfaction, "it seems you underestimated us. Those embarrassing parents you were so ashamed of? We're quite comfortable now. More than comfortable, actually. We're rich." Mom's entire demeanor changed instantly, her voice becoming syrupy sweet. "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. Family is so important, after all. Is it? Grandma's voice was cool. Of course. And speaking of family, Mom's eyes darted to Ashley, who was already preening. You have another granddaughter who would love to get to know you. She could really use a nice car too, maybe even something a little more special? Grandpa's laugh crackled through the speaker. You mean the granddaughter you just took to Hawaii while leaving Audrey alone? That granddaughter? Mom's face flushed. That's not. I mean, look, as grandparents, you should treat the girls equally. They're the same age, after all. It's only fair they get the same gifts. Equally? Grandma's voice turned sharp. That's rich coming from you, Linda. Parents should love their children equally too. But that hasn't been the case in your household, has it? The line went dead. Mom stared at her phone for a moment before turning to me, her expression hardening. Audrey, you need to give that car to your sister. Excuse me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ashley needs a good car for college, Dad jumped in. She got accepted to State University. She needs reliable transportation. You're just working at that cafe, you don't need anything this fancy. Ashley was already walking toward the Mercedes, hand outstretched. Give me the keys, sis. You know, I'll look better driving it anyway. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of it all was just too much. This is my car, I said firmly. And I'm not giving it to anyone. Dad stepped forward, his face red with anger. If you don't give that car to your sister right now, you can get out of this house. Funny you should say that, I said, walking to the Mercedes. I popped the trunk, revealing my packed suitcases and boxes. I'd been ready to leave for days. Their mouths hung open as I pulled an envelope from my purse and held it up. Oh, and by the way, I won't be serving coffee much longer. I got accepted to Princeton on a full scholarship. Ashley's shriek could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Mom stumbled backward like I'd slapped her. Dad just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I got into my car, the leather seats still new enough to creak slightly. Through the windshield, I could see their shocked faces, their perfect family fantasy crumbling before their eyes. Those last few weeks of summer at my grandparents' house were the happiest I'd ever experienced. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of Grandpa humming as he read the newspaper. No walking on eggshells, no competing for attention, no feeling like an unwanted shadow. Just peace. Moving to Princeton was bittersweet. I hugged my grandparents goodbye, promising to call every day, and set off in my Mercedes with everything I owned. The drive to New Jersey felt like crossing a boundary between my old life and my new one. My grandparents had found me a beautiful little apartment just 10 minutes from campus. Nothing flashy, but worlds better than any dorm room, hardwood floors, big windows, and even a small balcony where I could study. They'd insisted on paying the rent, despite my protests. I still wanted some independence, though, so I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me, still serving coffee, but this time by choice, not necessity. My co-workers were mostly other students, and for the first time in my life, I found myself making real friends. One Sunday afternoon, about a month into the semester, Grandma called with some interesting news. Your parents showed up at our door yesterday, she said. My heart skipped a beat. What did they want? Oh, the usual. Linda was all smiles and fake apologies, asking about our financial situation and hinting about Ashley's upcoming birthday. Your father kept looking around the house, probably trying to guess our net worth. What did you tell them? Grandpa's voice joined in on the line. We told them that we'd already decided what to do with our money. It's all going to you. I could picture their faces. How did they take that? Let's just say Linda's smile didn't look so genuine after that, Grandma chuckled. We asked them not to come back. That evening, I blocked their numbers and all their social media accounts. Ashley's too. I knew what would come next, sudden declarations of love and regret, offers to start fresh as a family. But I didn't need their kind of family anymore. Now, sitting in my constitutional law class, taking notes and actually enjoying the complexity of the material, I sometimes think about that little girl who used to pray for her parents' love. I wish I could tell her that she'd find something better, not just love, but respect, support, and the freedom to be herself. My phone buzzes quietly in my pocket, probably my study group confirming our meeting at the library later. Or maybe it's Jake, that cute guy from my psychology class who keeps asking to get coffee, not at my cafe, thankfully. It's such a normal life. No drama, no constant comparisons, no feeling like I'm not enough. Just me, my studies, my friends, and my future stretching out ahead of me, full of possibilities.
The room fell silent at her words, and the adults exchanged uncertain glances. My sister, attempting to diffuse the tension, was about to intervene, but I stopped her. "Why?" she asked. "Because the lumberjack is giving him a scary look and I can't see his face. There's too much hair. I'm Sophia. We live as a family of 5, my parents, my sister, and my niece. My sister lost her partner to illness and returned home with my 2-year-old niece, Emma. Since then, we've all pitched in to raise Emma. Luckily, I work from home, so I take care of Emma during the day while my parents and sister are busy. I own my own company but don't have any employees. I started it by myself and generate income from a game app I developed during my student days. It became popular, and subsequent app releases have been consistently successful. Now I have a stable income. My sister worries about me, a recluse who rarely leaves the house. Sophia, you know you could move out, right? Why would I? Isn't it time for you to experience living alone or something? Not really. Are you worried about us? Huh? You've been helping with Emma since we moved back. With your income, you could afford a fancy city apartment. A city apartment? No thanks. But enough. What's your point? You're still young. What about romance? Romance? Not interested. Being with Emma is all the comfort I need, so don't worry about me. And it's true, I adore my niece. I've never had any interest in romantic relationships. I just want to be there for Emma, who is the child of my sister, whom I deeply respect. I openly admit I really care about my sister and would do anything for her. I've even chased away countless worthless guys who approached my sister like a loyal dog. Among them, my brother-in-law was the only one I thought I could trust to take care of my sister. Losing him was hard on her, and I want to be there for her. Both my sister and Emma mean the world to me. My niece is quite mysterious. When we spend time together, she occasionally does something odd. When she was just 2 years old, she would suddenly wave her hand as if saying goodbye. Initially, I thought she was dancing along with the TV, but she did it even when the TV was off, laughing as she waved. I mentioned this to my sister, but she couldn't recall any relevant incidents. One day, I asked my niece, "Are you saying goodbye to someone?" She nodded. Then, in the next moment, she pointed behind me. My spine involuntarily stiffened. A child waving at nothing, stories like that circulate. Things unseen by adults are visible to children. But having her point behind me was unsettling. Still, my niece's laughter reassured me. When she started speaking, I asked her, "Who are you waving to?" "A lumberjack." "A lumberjack? Who?" She loves books, and lately she's been asking me to read stories about lumberjacks. I understood that she saw someone resembling a lumberjack. Now it's routine for her to wave at this unseen figure, and my fear has faded. When my niece turned 8, the lumberjack's true identity was revealed. That summer, during a visit to my maternal grandparents' house, I was cleaning the storage shed. My niece, eager to help, pointed at a photograph in the shed. "Look, it's the lumberjack," she exclaimed. "The lumberjack?" "Yes, it's the lumberjack." Confused, I studied the photo she indicated. "This person is the lumberjack." She nodded. "Yes, he visits you sometimes." I chuckled. "Actually, that's not the lumberjack. He's your mom's and my grandpa, and instead of a lumberjack, he was a hunter." "What's a hunter?" "Someone who receives the spirit of a bear." "Ah, I see. A hunter looks like a lumberjack," she observed. Indeed, there's a resemblance. The figure my niece saw was my late grandpa. It warmed my heart. My grandpa passed away when I was in middle school, but I was very close to him. He had been a traditional bear hunter and taught me about bear behavior and hunting. Citing the mountain god's wrath, he didn't take me along because I was a young girl. However, I learned how to handle bears and extract oil. Even now, it feels like he's watching over us. During this time, I had an encounter with a certain man. It happened while I was giving a lecture on app development at the request of a friend. The man who approached me, eyes shining as he looked at the app I developed, was Michael. Although he worked as a regular employee in a corporate company, he attended the lecture because he wanted to explore app development as a side gig. "Can I create popular apps like you, man?" Well, once you learn the programming languages, it's mostly a matter of practice. There's limitless potential. We exchanged only a few words initially, but afterward, I became close to him as he attended my lectures repeatedly, and we eventually started dating. Until then, I had no interest in romance, but his graceful demeanor captivated me. One day, Michael asked me to meet him at a nearby cafe because he had something to discuss. As soon as I arrived, I noticed the weight on his shoulders. "I'm sorry for bothering you when you're busy, but I needed to see you." His story was heavy. His mother was seriously ill with little time left. There was a chance that advanced medical treatment could save her, but it required funds. Unfortunately, without insurance, he couldn't afford it. It's a tough situation. With $35,000, I might be able to help my mom. I encouraged him, "Please do whatever you can. And remember, sometimes just talking about it can ease the burden." But then he hesitated, saying, "Still, $35,000 isn't easy to come by." He'd been working for over 10 years, so not having $35,000 in savings seemed surprising. Saving $3,500 per year shouldn't be too difficult given your job. "Michael, don't you have any money after all these years?" "No, it's not like that, but $35,000 feels like a huge sum." "Sorry, I still don't understand. Do you have $35,000 or not?" Michael hesitated and then said, Yes, I do." "Well then, it's not a problem. Use it for your mom as soon as possible," I reassured him. Unexpectedly, he changed the topic. "If I use that money, we won't be able to have a wedding, will we?" Surprised, I asked, "What?" Michael confessed, "I want to marry you, Sophia." It was an unforeseen proposal. Marriage, something I hadn't actively considered, suddenly felt significant. But right now, there were more pressing matters. Sure, if I were to get married, I'd want it to be with you. But I'm not the type for big weddings, so I think a simple engagement party would suffice. Even though we call it an engagement, it's really just a formality. We can just gather our families for a meal. So go ahead and use that $35,000 for your mom. I have a decent income too, so there won't be any financial worries after we're married. You can rest assured." "Thank you," he replied. 3 months after that incident, I was relieved to hear that Michael's mother began to recover thanks to advanced medical treatment. Once again, Michael proposed marriage, and I accepted. I had thought we would visit each other's parents' homes to exchange greetings. However, since his parents' house is company housing and they'd like to avoid becoming the subject of neighborhood gossip, we decided not to visit their house. Instead, we held the meeting at a restaurant to avoid inconveniencing him. I also refrained from inviting him to my home. My parents, Michael, and I all gathered at another restaurant. Afterward, we would celebrate our engagement with a private family meal, and both sides agreed to proceed with the wedding. However, it was during this gathering that my niece made a surprising statement. On that day, my niece was unusually restless from mourning. When I asked her why, she claimed that the hunter was moving around more than she'd ever seen. I tried to stay positive, thinking maybe my grandpa was nervous about my wedding. But when we arrived at the restaurant and took our seats, my niece spoke up before any greetings. "You should reconsider this guy," she said. The room fell silent. The adults wore indescribable expressions. My sister attempted to diffuse the tension, but I stopped her. "Why?" my sister asked. "Because the hunter is giving him a scary look, and I can't see his face." "There's too much hair," my niece replied. Michael shot an uncomfortable glance at my niece. Children have vivid imaginations, don't they? Maybe it's from TV. He attempted to lighten the mood, but his smile vanished, leaving him pale. Perhaps anyone would find my niece unusual upon first meeting her. Still, in that moment, I sensed Michael's narrow-mindedness as he twisted his face at a child. "I see. Maybe reconsider this guy. The hunter has been standing in front of you, Sophia, all this time." He's been brushing away the hair that keeps growing from this guy's head. And a white dog is angry. She pointed at Michael's mother. A dog? I asked. Yes, the hair growing from his head has been bothering the white dog, my niece explained. Michael's mother's expression changed abruptly, and she immediately began apologizing. I apologize. I don't need the money anymore. Consider this job non-existent. Job? Both my parents and I were puzzled, but it was Michael who responded with a barrage of insults. "Damn it, fulfill your role properly. I'll refund the money. I shouldn't have taken this job. I apologize. Your fault. It's all ruined. Enough. I won't allow hurtful words toward my loved ones. Now what's going on?" I demanded. The truth revealed by his mother left us all dumbfounded. As it turns out, the person I believed to be Michael's mother was actually a hired staff member, a jack of all trades. In other words, she wasn't his mother. She knew it was wrong, but tempted by the money, she accepted the request. Despite her desperate apologies, I couldn't bring myself to blame her. At this point, marriage was the least of our concerns. But Michael was determined to salvage the situation. Tearfully, he said, "Sophia, I'm truly sorry for lying. But please understand, my mom couldn't be here due to her hospitalization. I truly care about you, and that's why I asked someone to play the role of my mom. My feelings for you are genuine. Please believe me." His eyes pleaded with me. "No, it's impossible," I replied. Without hesitation. What kind of marriage starts with a lie? Is this some B-movie? This is real life. I won't marry under false pretenses. Let's consider this marriage null and void. Michael sighed and took a different approach. "Fine, guess it's over. You're stingy anyway." "What? Normally you'd help pay for your partner's mother's medical expenses. To you, $35,000 isn't a big deal." "No, it's an enormous sum," I corrected him. "That's why I called you stingy. I thought marriage would give me financial freedom." "Well, if there's no marriage, then I guess I don't need to be here anymore. You're truly creepy. Wait." Michael was about to utter hurtful words to my niece again, but in that instant he scratched his neck and collapsed. In a hurry, we called an ambulance. When they asked about family members, there was no one there for Michael, so he was taken to the hospital alone. My niece chimed in. His hair was tangled around his neck, so it must have been painful. The tense atmosphere seemed to tighten even more. "The white dog is smiling." "That's great," my niece said to the woman who would pose as Michael's mother. She had been single and owned a dog. Recently, her dog had passed away, and she couldn't bear the loneliness. She had been working in a job that left her feeling desperate and burdened with guilt. However, now she was determined to find a proper job. After apologizing repeatedly, she left the restaurant. "While he was after my money, it seems. How embarrassing. I apologize for inconveniencing everyone," I said, laughing nervously. My niece beamed, but my parents and sister remained unsmiling. "Emma, can you really see these things?" my sister asked. My parents and sister were more fascinated by my niece than by the fact that my marriage had fallen through. "Well, I guess it's true sometimes. That lightens the heart. Is anyone with Mom?" my sister continued. "No one." "Ah, I see. Well, let's eat a feast and then go home. It's my treat." Ultimately, we ended up having a family dinner and then returned home. "Emma, thank you for today," I said to my niece after returning home, but she seemed contemplative. "We shouldn't tell lies." "Huh. Because I lied to Mom." "What?" "There's always Dad by Mom's side, but it's a secret." "Why?" "Dad is watching over Mom silently." "I see. He must want to protect both you and Mom." From that moment on, my niece stopped mentioning what she could see. The adults around her, including me, avoided the topic. Although I hadn't seen Michael since he was taken to the hospital, 6 months had passed. One day, while watching TV, I nearly choked on my tea. The program featured women who had fallen victim to marriage scams. They united, hired detectives, and sought refunds from the con artists. The mosaic-covered scammer on screen looked unmistakably like Michael. The same tactics, claiming his mother had a terminal illness and needed advanced medical treatment, had ensnared women, some of whom had given over $70,000. "Wow, I'm relieved I wasn't fooled. Thank you, Emma," my niece was smiling. 10 years later, my niece turned 18, and I entered my 40s. But a new encounter awaited me. Does marriage hold any meaning for me now, past the age of 40? Lost in thought, my niece approached and whispered, "Sophia, this time it's genuine. You'll definitely be happy. Congratulations." Huh? 6 months later, I married and left my parents' home, enjoying blissful days. My niece had saved me countless times, and whether or not she possessed mysterious abilities, she remained dear to me. As an aunt who had received so much help, I genuinely wished for her happiness. Marriage scams are despicable. I hope victims receive their refunds swiftly. Let's strive to live honestly and righteously. I've been kicked out of the house. Can you let me stay just for tonight? What? You were kicked out? Grandpa, come live with us. Really? Are you sure? My father-in-law had been treated terribly by his son and daughter-in-law and was finally kicked out of their house. We decided to have him live with us in our family-run sushi restaurant. I'm Emma, 40 years old, and my husband Ethan is 2 years older. We were high school sweethearts but separated when we started working. I thought it was over between us, but Ethan returned to our hometown a few years later and proposed, saying he wanted to be with me forever. We got married, and things have been going pretty well. Our daughter Lily is in the 3rd grade, and we're a close-knit family of 3. We run a sushi restaurant together, Ethan's lifelong dream. However, it's not doing as well as we'd like, and we're trying to figure out how to make it more successful. It's pretty good, and we do have customers, but there's nothing extraordinary about it. We'd like to try advertising on trendy social media, but we just don't have the time right now. Today we are visiting Ethan's brother and sister-in-law. To be honest, I've never really liked them. Even now, they are acting aloof. When Ethan offered them some sushi we brought as a gift, his brother reacted harshly. "Brother, I've included some new ingredients. Try it and let me know what you think." "Hey, don't bring that stuff here. I only eat sushi from high-end restaurants." "Well, you don't have to be so mean. Father-in-law can eat it." Honestly, what a way for a couple to talk. Since my mother-in-law passed away, father-in-law has been living with them, so we visit occasionally to see him. I've noticed that they treat him worse and worse each time. "Ethan, Emma, thank you. I'll enjoy it later. I'll make some coffee now," father-in-law said, who had been playing with our daughter, coming over. "Wait, father-in-law, that's expensive coffee for guests. Don't use it on family." "Dad, don't touch anything. Mia told you not to go into the kitchen." "But you two aren't even offering coffee when your younger brother's family has come over." "We were just about to do it." "Oh, be quiet. It's annoying enough having you here every day." "We don't need coffee. Instead, please try the sushi. I'd love to hear what you think with your refined tastes." I intervened, trying to be as gentle as possible. "Emma, it must be tough running a sushi restaurant with a brother like this. You need to brush up or you'll never be successful." Brush? No use using English words. A failing sushi restaurant must be drowning in debt and on the brink of bankruptcy, his sister-in-law continued. "We do have debt, but we are paying it off little by little," my husband snapped back. Ignoring my husband, she continued to me, "You should have married an elite banker like me. It's sad how different the 2 brothers turned out." "Exactly. If you followed my lead, you'd have a better life. A sushi restaurant from a dream since you were fishing with that." She trailed off. "Both of you, stop it. Why do you keep saying such awful things?" Father-in-law spoke up unusually sternly. It seemed that my brother-in-law and his wife couldn't forgive father-in-law for defending us. I never thought they would go so far. It happened that night. The doorbell rang just after 10 p.m. when our daughter was asleep. "Who could it be at this hour?" "I'll get it," my husband said as he went to the door. "Dad, what's going on?" I rushed over when I heard his surprised voice. "Oh, I'm sorry for coming at this hour. I've been kicked out of the house. I hate to ask so suddenly, but could you let me stay just for tonight?" "What? You were kicked out?" He told us that after we left my brother-in-law's house, this had happened. "Hey, Dad, what was that earlier?" Defending Ethan and them. "Well, you two were saying such terrible things. You know we are only taking care of you because we have to, right? It's a nuisance. We've been looking after you because you helped with the down payment for this condo. But isn't it enough? Yeah, we've let you live comfortably. You two felt that way. I offered to cook and clean, but you told me not to do anything. But we don't want you touching the kitchen or anything. Let's just call it quits, shall we? Why don't you go live with your beloved younger son?" "Yeah." We were outraged when we heard this. What? Is that unbelievable? I've been concerned about my brother and sister-in-law's attitude, but this is the worst. I felt the same way. I can't forgive them anymore. Anyway, it's late, and we have to get up early tomorrow, so let's go to bed. Father-in-law, please warm up in the shower. I'll prepare the bed in the meantime. Thank you, Emma. I'm sorry. The next morning, our daughter was surprised to see her grandfather. Grandpa, what are you doing here? Good morning, Lily. Sorry for coming so suddenly. Why, I'm happy. Let's play when I get back from school. She's been fond of her grandfather since she was a baby, and they've always been close. Mom, did something happen to Grandpa at that house? Oh well, a little. A 9-year-old girl is sharp and understands many things. He's always bullied at that house, and it's sad. Can't you live with us? What? Grandpa, come live with us. That night, our family unanimously decided to have father-in-law live with us. We had been worried about my brother-in-law and his wife looking down on father-in-law. But we couldn't forgive such terrible treatment. We had considered living with father-in-law before, but were concerned about what the family would say and couldn't bring it up. However, my husband was delighted and thanked me. We were most concerned about what our daughter would think, but she was the one who brought it up. So we were surprised. With that settled, it was time to act. My husband called his brother to report, but instead of apologizing, both my brother-in-law and his wife were thrilled. And so father-in-law became a member of our family. A few days later, father-in-law said he wanted to work at the sushi restaurant. It could be in lieu of rent. Don't worry about that. I've always loved cooking, and I actually worked at a sushi restaurant when I was young. Really? Before Ethan was born. And so father-in-law began to help out in the back of the sushi restaurant. Ethan, can I talk to you for a second? I think this fish might be better if we use kombucha. Huh? Which one? Also, could you listen to me for a moment? There are a few things I'm concerned about. Perhaps because they were father and son, father-in-law was sharing his thoughts with my husband one after another. His advice seemed spot on, and my husband agreed to change the preparation method for some of the sushi. Gradually, the number of customers began to increase. Online reviews increased, the taste improved, and the restaurant looked cleaner, receiving high praise. Sales also steadily grew. Thanks to father-in-law, our sushi restaurant was able to change for the better. Father-in-law wasn't always at the restaurant, so I felt relieved that my daughter's time alone decreased, and the two seemed to enjoy eating and reading together. But about 6 months later, an incident occurred. My brother-in-law and his wife barged in. Dad! Noah and Mia too. What's going on? We have come to take Dad back. We were so surprised when you really left, even though we were just joking. Yeah, so let's go back quickly. What? What are this couple talking about? My husband and I exchanged glances. Noah, a joke? Besides, I'm working at this sushi restaurant, so I can't go back there. That's it. Sales have increased since Dad came here. Now it's a popular restaurant that has a talent for management. Management talent? That's not it. So I'm thinking of starting a sushi restaurant too. I've quit the bank, and the store will open next week. Come back and help me. Wait a minute. You kicked father-in-law out and never contacted him. And now you want him back. That's too convenient. Yeah, brother, don't be selfish. What? You're going against me? I can pull strings to make sure this small shop doesn't get a loan from the bank. What? Is that a threat? Anyway, I could have managed better from the start. You might be doing well now, but you'll probably go downhill soon. What did you say? Calm down, Emma. Father-in-law admonished me when I raised my voice. All right, I'll go back, he said. Father-in-law? Dad. Good, our luxury condominium is better, right? Let's go, my brother-in-law snorted at us. Father-in-law looked into our eyes, nodded once, and left. They came to take Grandpa back. That's weird. They'll bully him again for sure. Our daughter, who had come home and learned what happened, was furious. She was right. After all the terrible treatment, it was unbelievable that they would demand him back now that our shop was doing well. But we endured it, thinking that if father-in-law had decided, we had to accept it. However, a month later, father-in-law appeared before us again. I'm back. Father-in-law, what happened? I got kicked out again. What? It's okay. I expected this. I knew it would happen. My husband and I listened to father-in-law's story about what he had been doing at my brother-in-law's place. It was outrageous. So father-in-law began living with us again, and our daughter was overjoyed. Of course, he also returned to work at the sushi restaurant. Even after father-in-law left, we faithfully practiced his teachings, and sales didn't drop, but it was undoubtedly tough with fewer hands. However, we managed to run the shop efficiently again, and thanks to father-in-law, we could procure fresh and rare fish, and the number of customers kept increasing. Then my brother-in-law and his wife, who had heard about our success, barged in again. They had always manipulated father-in-law for their convenience and looked down on people. I couldn't forgive them anymore. What's going on here? No, what's the matter? What do you mean, what's the matter? Our shop's customers are decreasing while there's a line here. That's because Ethan's sushi is delicious and Emma's service is good, isn't it? We're making it just as you taught us in our shop. Did you teach us a fake recipe? I didn't teach you anything fake. Then why is there such a difference? First of all, who's making the sushi? A friend I hired. We plan to succeed in a high-end sushi restaurant together. You're not telling me that person is an amateur, are you? No way, he has a chef's license. Where did he train, and for how many years? Huh? Training? Are you underestimating sushi chefs? Just having a chef's license doesn't mean you can serve sushi to others. But with that recipe, even this guy wasn't doing well until he was taught by Dad. And then he prospered. What are you talking about, brother? I trained for years to open a sushi restaurant. Even I had to study, prepare, and redo things after opening. I couldn't just serve new sushi right away. Also, you're advertising your shop as a high-end restaurant, right? I saw your website. Even if you could serve the same taste and sushi as us, no one would come if you charged double the price. Why? Even if they come once, if it's expensive and tastes amateur, they won't come again. Isn't that obvious? Hey, don't act so high and mighty. I'm more professional in management. Enough. What? Father-in-law shouted, you may have worked in a bank and know about management, but that's not enough to run a restaurant. For sushi, you need knowledge about fish, how to cut it, how to preserve freshness, and it takes years of training to make sushi. Ethan has spent years learning. But that's why I asked you to write down everything about cutting and shaping with your guidance. My brother-in-law insisted. I did write everything down. I was even planning to guide you if you were serious, but you told me to leave because I was in the way. There's no way someone who was never trained can do it just by looking at a paper, father-in-law replied firmly. Oh, then my sister-in-law chimed in, guidance? Your brother only managed because he trained himself. But father-in-law is just an amateur fish lover acting all high and mighty. Do you have that condescending attitude towards customers too? Huh, I may be an amateur now, but when I was young, before I became a salaryman, I worked at a sushi restaurant, at Sushi Jan no less. That super famous place, even the branches run by disciples who have branched off are now impossible to book at. The master chef of that main shop is now quite a celebrity, which we used to learn together. If that's true, if you worked at such a successful sushi restaurant, there's no way you would have changed jobs to become a salaryman. My sister-in-law retorted. Normally that might be the case, but your mother was frail. Raising a child while working as a sushi chef from early morning to midnight was impossible. When you were born, I changed jobs and became a regular salaryman. No, it's a lie. It's not a lie. You can even check with Sushi January. What? Indeed, the sushi restaurant where father-in-law had worked when he was young had become so famous that no one didn't know about it. Thanks to father-in-law's personality, which had maintained relationships with his old colleagues and mentors, our family was blessed with good things like getting help with fish procurement at the market and learning about rare fish. My husband and I were also surprised that father-in-law's advice was so appropriate. If that's the case, I'll fire the guy I hired. Now I should hire a sushi chef, right? Then Dad and I will make an even more prosperous shop than this one. My brother-in-law, who quickly changed his tune, was firmly told by father-in-law. I'll make it clear, I have no intention of ever going back to your place. What? Why? It's suffocating there with restrictions on what I can touch and do. Living with Ethan and the others, I realized I was stifled. I've been complained about all the time, kicked out, and then called back for your convenience. We won't kick you out anymore. father-in-law's sister-in-law said with a forced smile. Even though you don't want to live together at all, huh? My sister-in-law froze with a pasted-on smile. You just want to call me back because you think it will make money, right? My sister-in-law seemed at a loss for words as father-in-law had hit the nail on the head. As I said earlier, having a manual alone won't do. You need to take time to hone your skills and most importantly, sincerity. You two are utterly lacking in that. But Dad, I apologize for everything so far. My brother-in-law tried to cozy up to father-in-law, trying to smooth things over with mere words. They were indeed a like-minded couple. Brother, it's time to start preparing for the evening business, so please leave. Please take your leave, my husband and I said in succession. You bastards, getting all cocky. I was an elite banker. I'll make sure you don't get any loans from now on. At that moment, the shop's door opened with a clatter. I'm home. Welcome back. Wait, Lily. I was surprised to see my daughter, who usually comes home through the back to our house, appear at the shop's entrance. Was that a threat just now? My daughter looked straight at my brother-in-law and his wife. You came to the shop before and yelled and said terrible things, and before that you bullied Grandpa at home all the time. What? What are you talking about, you cheeky girl? Just like a low-level couple's daughter. Mama, Papa. My friend Hannah's dad is a police officer, so I'll consult with him. Unexpected words came out, and the three of us were surprised. What? My brother-in-law and his wife turned pale. Hannah's dad is a very important person in the police. What? Let's go. We are leaving, brother. It was my innocent daughter's voice that was the last straw. My brother-in-law and his wife scrambled and ran out. Welcome back, Lily. Wow, that was a surprise. Thank you for helping us. Father-in-law looked at our daughter with surprise and tenderness. Sure that Hannah's dad is a police officer. Whether he is important or not, I don't know. I was left speechless by our daughter's nonchalant response. My husband, father-in-law, and I looked at each other and then burst into laughter. After that, my brother-in-law's shop closed down within 6 months. He had said that he quit his job and started the shop with determination, but the reality was slightly different. He had blamed his own mistake on a subordinate, and when it was discovered, he was demoted. Unhappy with the demotion, he quit the bank in a fit of anger. So even when the shop's management didn't go well, there was no one to help him, and he ended up with a massive debt. With that piling up, there was no way that couple could succeed, and they are now embroiled in a messy divorce drama. My brother-in-law seems to be job hunting, but given the way he quit, re-employment in the financial industry is tough. He has no goodwill, so there is no one to help him. On the other hand, our sushi shop has been thriving with a steady increase in customers, and we've paid off all the remaining debt. We've been featured in town magazines and on TV, and more people are sharing about us on social media, so we are busy every day. Of course, father-in-law is also helping out in the shop. I never thought I'd have such a fulfilling life at this age. Thank you so much. On our day off, as we were all eating cake, father-in-law said this with gratitude. We are the ones who should be thanking you. That's right, not just the shop, but even at home, we feel at ease and are helped because father-in-law is here. Thank you for loving Lily as well. Grandpa, let's play Othello. I won't lose today. Our daughter, who finished her cake first, called father-in-law from the living room. There will surely be more challenges ahead. The shop may face difficulties, and living together, we may get on each other's nerves at times. Life is long with its ups and downs. At such times, we'll look at each other and talk it out. If we share what we're all thinking, we'll surely overcome anything. Watching the smiles of our daughter and father-in-law, my husband and I smiled at each other. Get over here now and pick up the old hag we kicked out of our house. We want nothing to do with her. Jackson's voice was cold over the phone. About a month after my father's funeral, I received this unexpected call from my brother. He had kicked our mother out of the house and demanded that I take care of her from now on. I was stunned, unable to comprehend the situation immediately. You're joking, right? You didn't actually kick Mom out of the house. Come see for yourself. Oh, and I let her take Dad's memorial tablet. Why would you do something so cruel? I have no use for Mom now that we can't get Dad's inheritance. She's just a poor burden, isn't she? I was shocked. Apparently, my late father had debts, and after paying them off, There was no inheritance left. This was news to me. Even worse, Jackson and his wife had been living in the family home all this time. It was outrageous. It's getting dark soon. If you don't come to pick her up, Mom will be sleeping on the streets. How could you be so cruel? I will never forgive you for this, Jackson. I don't need your forgiveness. Jackson hung up without hearing me out, and subsequent calls went unanswered. When I finally managed to reach my mother, she confirmed that everything Jackson had said was true. Angry at Jackson and worried for my mother, I had no choice but to drive over to where she was. My name is Lily. I'm a 27-year-old woman in a hurry. 3 years ago, I married Mason, who is the same age as me, and we've been living together since. At the beginning of our marriage, we lived with my parents in a family home. But 2 years ago, Jackson and his wife abruptly moved in. They said our presence was making the place crowded, and we were forced to leave. My older brother Jackson, 8 years my senior, has always been selfish, but his marriage seems to have enhanced that trait. Our family home, where I was born and raised, is a spacious mansion inherited from my grandfather, with extensive land. There should be no discomfort in living together. I was not satisfied with the situation and argued with Jackson, but my husband, who hates conflicts, urged us to leave. Around that time, my father was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, which had already significantly worsened. I wanted to spend his last moments with him, but that didn't happen. The disease rapidly consumed my father, and he passed away a month ago. My heart aches, knowing that my mother must be in much more pain than I was to have my own brother treat us this way amidst all the fresh sorrow. It was pitiful. What would happen next was truly a shock. An hour later, when we arrived at our family home, my mom was sitting desolate on a suitcase in the garden. The front door was locked. Jackson, she said, had taken her keys. Using my set of keys, I unlocked the door and walked in with my mom. Jackson and Olivia were sprawled on the sofa, nonchalantly watching TV. Is this some kind of joke? I demanded. Huh. How did you get in? Jackson looked up, annoyed. I used my key to open the front door. Isn't it obvious? Slipped my mind. Leave your key, take the old lady, and go. This isn't funny. How can you be watching TV after kicking your own mother out of the house? Besides, if the house remained even after Dad's debts were paid off, Mom has a right to live here. Huh? What are you talking about? Jackson's dismissive attitude infuriated me. I stood in front of the TV. Mom has a right to inherit this house. If you can't live with her, you should be the one to leave. Shut up. This house is mine. Dad gave it to me when he was alive. Don't act smart without knowing anything. What? What do you mean? My mom also looked puzzled, shaking her head. In the face of our confusion, Jackson smirked and got up from the sofa, bringing out an envelope from a room in the back. Look at this. What's this? I opened the envelope. It contained documents proving the inheritance prepared by a judicial scribe and a real estate ownership certificate. The property had been transferred to his name a month before Dad passed away. Mom and I were shocked as we looked at the documents. Why would Dad do something like this? I asked, looking at Dad's picture. Because I'm his favorite, of course. I told him that Mom would take the house once he passed away, so he gave it to me while he was still alive. That can't be. I can't believe it. Open your eyes and face reality. No matter how many times we checked the document, the property was in Jackson's name. All this just for a house, my mom muttered in disbelief. Is there no other inheritance? Nothing left for Mom? Nothing. Be glad that the debts are cleared. This can't be real. You're not just worrying about Mom. You realize there's no inheritance for you either, right? Jackson handed over a bank card that contained only a few dollars. I wasn't after Dad's inheritance, but it was a shock to learn that he had left me nothing. This is too cruel, I said, tears welling up. Olivia laughed her heart out, seeing our dejection. Now get lost. You poor people have no business here. Jackson and Olivia forcibly drove us out of the house. Ouch, that hurts. My mom had fallen and scraped her palm when they pushed us out. Blood was seeping from the wound. As I wrapped her hand in my handkerchief, tears of frustration welled up and fell. My mother, seeing me like this, gently wiped my tears, her eyes filled with sorrow as well. Mom, our place is small, but come stay with us. But I don't want to impose on Mason. I'll find somewhere else to stay. Don't worry, I just can't leave you like this. I'm going to call Mason right now. Just wait. Wiping my tears, I grabbed my cell phone and dialed. From the other end of the line, I heard Mason's voice. Hello. Mason, I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. My mom has been kicked out of her house. I explained the situation to my surprised husband. He hummed in understanding, though he seemed a bit hesitant. I held my breath, waiting for Mason's response. Our apartment is pretty cramped compared to Mom's house. It might not be the most comfortable. Yeah, our place is tiny, but I don't mind. Bring your mom over. We've had times where we were taken care of at home too. In times of trouble, we should help each other out. Mason, thank you so much. My husband is a kind man with a big heart. He could never leave someone in need. Quickly, we took Mom to our apartment, and from that day on, we lived together. However, living with 3 people in our small apartment was certainly cramped. We didn't have enough savings to buy a house yet, but we considered moving to a slightly larger place. That might be good. I feel bad for your mom in this small space, Mason said as we searched for properties on the computer. My mom's cell phone rang. After a while, she hung up and said something we never could have imagined. Why don't we live in my Highlands condominium? Wait, what? Highlands condominium? Yes. What do you mean? My mother began to explain. To our surprise, apparently my grandfather, who was a wealthy man, was quite a spendthrift and spent all the money he made in a day. To deal with his constant borrowing, my grandmother had no choice but to sell off their farmland to make ends meet. According to my mom, my father was also a big spender, and we didn't have any assets other than the house we lived in. So I was really worried about our future. That's why I invested in real estate with the money I earned when I was working before I got married. My husband and I were absolutely stunned. It turned out that, in addition to the Highlands condominium, my mom was also managing an apartment building and had made a significant amount of money from her real estate investments. I can't even comprehend this. It's too amazing. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Anyway, I just got a call from the management company that there's a vacancy in the Highlands condominium. We can move in next month. What do you think? There was no reason to refuse such a generous offer. Plus, it was a Highlands condominium with 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, located just a 5-minute walk from the station, which was much more comfortable than our current situation. Thank you, Mom, but we may only be able to pay as much rent as we are for the apartment. You don't need to worry about that. No way. We have to do this properly, even if we're family. Oh, I need to tell the landlord that we're moving out. Looking at my husband and I'm beaming with joy, my mother's face brightened too. Time flew by as we busied ourselves preparing to move. Before we knew it, we had spent 2 months living in our new home at Highlands condominium. As I was about to head out for some shopping, I was taken aback when the Jackson couple suddenly appeared in front of the condominium entrance. Why are you, a pauper, living in Highlands condominium? Did you get the jackpot or something? Of course not. Highlands condominium has always belonged to my mom. Jackson and Olivia were both taken aback. What? They exclaimed in unison, looking at the towering condominium. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at their confused and goofy expressions. Jackson, his face flushing red, began to seethe with anger. That wretched woman. I can't believe she was hiding this from us while pretending to be poor. My mom never said she was poor. You just assumed it, Jackson. Plus, she inherited a large house. What's wrong with that? That's not the point. Don't yell here. It's disrespectful to the other residents. Besides, how did you know I was here? Jackson said that when he couldn't reach my mother, he tracked her down using her mobile phone's location. Why are you trying to contact Mom now after kicking her out? I bet it's something nasty again. Regardless, if Mom is here, I want to see her. Let me in now. You must be joking. If you hurt Mom again, I couldn't bear it. If you have something to say, you can tell me. But they kept insisting on seeing my mother without revealing why. The Jackson couple seemed rather flustered. Weren't you living comfortably in your huge family house, just the 2 of you? It's none of your business. Fine. If you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I have to go now. Bye. As I tried to walk past the Jackson couple, Jackson suddenly grabbed my arm tightly. Ouch, let me go. Just call Mom. Absolutely not. I'll call the police. Jackson scoffed at me, looking down with disdain. There's no way the police would come for a simple family argument. Even if they did, you couldn't sue me for just grabbing your arm. I sighed. I suppose you're right. It was true. Calling the police over something so minor might not only be futile, but also disruptive to others. I felt bad and ended up not saying anything. Fine, I'll tell my mom, but only if you tell me why you're here. The utility bills for that house are ridiculous. Just for the AC, the electric bill is $500. This is no joke. Their old traditional style house had more than 8 rooms, so it was no surprise that utility costs were high. But even so, a $500 electricity bill seemed a little steep. It was a particularly hot summer, so they probably overused the AC. I thought you would have known that from the start. How would we have known? Mom used to pay the bills. Jackson scratched his head frantically as Olivia fumed. There's no way we would have known. Do you know the property tax for that house is $5,000 a year? What? I can't believe you didn't know. Why would an old house like that cost so much? How are we supposed to pay that? Our house is old and has a large yard, so it's only natural that it would cost a lot to maintain. And apparently, it costs more in taxes to give away property while you're alive than after you pass away. Wait, is that true? Jackson looked puzzled. I see you didn't know. I told him this was all true information I had heard from my mom. The color drained from their faces. Seeing the stunned Jacksons, Olivia burst out in anger, saying, "It's your fault for not doing your homework." And they started fighting right in front of me. After all the trouble we went through to get Dad to change the name on the house, this is too much. That's what you get for doing something so underhanded. But even Dad said clearly that it would be better to give it to me than to your mom. I can't believe it. I was shocked and fell silent, realizing that my father had disregarded my mom and me. Seizing the moment, Jackson made an outrageous request. You can have the house. Let's exchange it for this Highlands condominium. What are you talking about? This isn't mine. It belongs to Mom. Please talk to Mom for me. I beg you. I promise to pass on your message, nothing more. What the hell does that supposed to mean? Feeling ridiculous for even engaging with them, I gave up on shopping and started to head back into the Highlands condominium. But the Jacksons tried to follow me in. Their audacity left me speechless. I'll sue you for trespassing. You just told us that wouldn't be a legal issue. It seems like they won't get the message until they suffer a real consequence. Exasperated, I called out to the management office next to the entrance. Excuse me, could you please call security? Someone who isn't a resident of the Highlands condominium is trying to force their way in. Wait a minute. The security guard, who was on standby 24/7 at the Highlands condominium, came running immediately. With the large security guard in front of them, the two of them were startled. I warned them once again to avoid the same thing happening in the future. I didn't call the police just now because you only grabbed my arm. But if you try to use force or enter the Highlands condominium again, I will really call the police. Okay, we beg you, don't do that. If I even catch a glimpse of you, I'll report it. So go back to your mansion that you got from Dad. Got it? Apparently scared of the police, Jackson and Olivia hastily retreated. I went back to my apartment and told my mother about the exchange with the Jacksons. But why did Dad let Jackson inherit the house? As I was feeling downcast, my mom smiled. Dad must have known what he was doing when he let Jackson inherit. He didn't want to burden me or you, Lily. Even though Dad was indifferent about money, he cared for me a lot. Of course, he always said he loved you, Lily, so much. Really? I was overjoyed to hear that my father felt that way about me. When my mom heard about the inheritance from Jackson, she muttered, "Are you going this far because you realized that he had given a severe punishment to Jackson, who was always self-centered? You knew how Dad felt, Mom." Of course, dear. We've been together for 38 years. I know what he's thinking without him saying a word. Besides, Jackson never took care of Dad when he was sick. I had been under the impression that the Jacksons were looking after my father. However, it turned out they hardly ever visited him. Not at home and barely in the hospital. When I visited my dad, he would often tell me, "Jackson comes to see me and you have your job to attend to, Lily. There's no need for you to go out of your way." I took his words to heart, not realizing that it was a gentle lie meant to ease my worries. I had it all wrong about Dad. I feel awful. I want to apologize. Don't fret, Lily. Your feelings are reaching Dad in heaven. The ones who should worry are the Jacksons. Who these days would buy a big high-maintenance house like that? I bet they'll struggle to find a buyer. The truth in my mom's previously gleeful words became evident after a while. The Jacksons, unable to maintain the house on their own, had put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer. They continued to live in it even a year later. In the midst of all this, Olivia accidentally started a grease fire while cooking chicken, and the house quickly burned down. Since they didn't have money for fire insurance, their life was going to get even tougher. Well, while I understand their predicament, it doesn't concern me. Apparently, the Jacksons are now camping out in the burned-down remains of their house. Living in the Highlands condominium is absolutely fantastic, and I can only feel gratitude toward my mother. I've been paying my mom rent every month, but it seems she's been saving it all to ensure we won't face hardship in the future. Every day is filled with peace and happiness as I live with my incredible mother and kind husband. As I visited my father's grave, I vowed to him that I would continue to repay my mother's kindness.